The following is a special video presentation of the Hennepin County Library.
Welcome to a discussion with Joel Fram. We are pleased to have Joel with us today to talk about his new book, I Heard It on the Playground. The book was co-written with Margaret Moss and Carol Boswell. I Heard It Through the Playground contains 616 of the best parenting tips for raising a child through age 5. It's fun and informative reading for any parent who wants to improve their parenting style or make it a little more effective. It's a pleasure to welcome you, Joel.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
What motivated you and your co-writers to produce such a book?
Well, when my son Jacob was an infant, I realized that my wife and I had developed little ways of doing things, like little ways of changing him, little ways of feeding him, little ways of putting him to sleep. And of course, when we talk to other parents, that's the kind of thing that other parents talk about with each other, and including giving a lot of advice to each other and just saying, you know, this worked with me, maybe you should try it. And I realized that there's a great deal of collective wisdom out there, because generally parents can be very clever about in developing little strategies and little ways of doing things. I think it has to do with necessity being the mother of invention,
Yes,
of course.
I was just thinking.
And but I had never seen those ideas put between two covers. So I had the idea of surveying parents as best we could and getting as many ideas as we could coming in, and pick out the best and put them in a book.
Oh, that sounds great. How did you collect it? How did you get a pool of parents to contribute ideas?
Well, there's a few ways. I have a children's bookstore in New York, so first thing we did is we sent out a questionnaire to the people on the mailing list of the bookstore. We also had paragraphs put in parenting papers around the country, soliciting suggestions. And we also, of course, talked to friends and just about anybody we could think of who might come up with a good idea. And we got quite a few of them.
Mm-hmm. And you did it nationwide, so
yes,
it's
it was
not
nationwide.
Just a regional.
Yeah, we didn't want it to have any particular regional focus.
So
Definitely,
these are
no, it's
applicable
totally. We got thousands and thousands, really, from everywhere.
I wondered how many you had gotten.
Yes, I lost count. At one point I was counting, then I just lost count, and I said, never mind, and just said, but there are definitely thousands.
But you
and
had a good
thousands.
range to choose from, select
Yes.
your 616.
Yes.
I see you've brought some hints with you. Maybe you'd
I
like
brought
to
a
show
few
us some of
props. This is one I like. This is a bagel on a string. The idea of this is, as you know, if you put a child in a stroller and take them for a walk and then give them something to eat, 2 seconds later that thing is on the ground. Here's a way around that. Get a bagel and tie a string around it, and tie the other end of the string to a part of the stroller, and if it falls, it just dangles.
That's a great idea.
It's incredibly simple, but you know you couldn't.
Yes.
It's a great snack, and couldn't be more effective.
It takes a while to eat too. So.
Exactly. Here's another one I like. This is monster spray. Monster spray is if your child is afraid of the monster coming out of the closet at night. Of course, what this is water and food coloring. Have the child spray around his room a little bit, wherever he likes, and just say, "This is monster spray. This will keep the monster from coming out, for the Tyrannosaurus from coming out and terrorizing you at night." And of course, he goes along with it and does it. And sure enough, the Tyrannosaurus doesn't come
Oh,
out.
that's a great idea.
Here's another one. I'm just sort of skipping subjects around.
yes,
This will also give me a chance to show up my own son's picture in front of your cameras. When the child is born, give the grandparents a loose leaf photo album like this, without the inserts. Then, as you want to send pictures you keep the inserts. When you want to send pictures to the grandparents, you simply send them in this form.
Oh, that's a great idea.
So they can keep their pictures nice and organized, and they're not all over their house, and they're in one systematic, chronological sequence.
Oh, that is great.
Once again, some of these things are extremely simple and clever, and they work.
Very creative.
Another one that I don't have a prop for, but I don't think I need it, is if you want to keep your child's fingers from getting caught in a door, keeping your child from locking himself in the bathroom, throw a towel over the top of the door.
Something
And
as
the door
easy
won't
as
close. Couldn't be simpler, but it works.
Yeah, I have a problem with my daughter, who's 2, going into her brother's room and locking the door by accident. So that's a good idea.
And
Yeah,
how do you
I'll
keep
try
her
that.
out? Okay.
How did you? I mean, these are great ideas. How did you digest down thousands of ideas to this 616? What was your criteria?
Well, first, there's nothing magic about the number 616, by the way. That's just how many good ones we had, and that's at some point somebody in the publisher counted them and came up with a number.
You pick the ones you like and then
Exactly,
count them.
and let the number follow that. We had several marathon sessions between the three of us, going through all the possibilities. There are some we rejected because they seemed too commonsensical, and we figured anybody knows that, and we shouldn't insult our readers by putting it in. Basically, I'm just giving you the negatives. The reasons why we rejected. Some we thought had been in print before. It seemed too much like they had come from Dr. Spock or some equivalent, so we didn't want to put them in for that because that's a much different kind of book. And then, of course, there was some duplication as well. But basically, we looked for things that were clever and easy, not too elaborate, and things that could be tried out on other kids. Of course, kids are very individual. One thing I'd emphasize about the book is not all of these ideas are obviously going to work with all children, but they're all easy to try.
They are, and they're presented in a very clear-cut way. Each chapter has tips in just a very concise one-paragraph fashion, so that it's not a lot of reading. If you have a problem, you just go to that chapter. And
there's a complete index also. I also wanted it to be a book that you could just open up anywhere and find something interesting to read. It's not something I don't think anybody's going to read it cover to cover, but it is full of little short paragraphs. You can just pick it up anytime, anywhere, and just for the fun of it, read it. And some of these things are really good for a laugh.
Oh, as we identify
as well. I mean, they're clever ideas, but they're also fun to read.
Oh, they are. And it's not intended to be any kind of an encyclopedia or a medical journal. It's just parenting advice.
Exactly.
What in your background did you bring to the making of the book? You mentioned that you owned a children's bookstore.
Yes.
What else?
First and foremost, of course, is being a father. That's what got my interest going in the subject, and and of course, having a children's bookstore for years has put me around children, around parents for years. So I do have some background there.
And what they like to read.
Yes, and Carol Boswell, our collaborator, is his mother of two boys, so she's been busy with that as well.
So you're all experienced with the parenting side of it.
Yes.
What about your co-authors' backgrounds?
Well, my wife is a psychiatrist, though not a child psychiatrist.
Margaret Moss.
Margaret Moss, yes. Yeah, she's one of the collaborators. Carol Boswell she's had different careers, but mainly, as far as this book goes, she's a mother, and very much a hands-on mother.
So you had someone right out in the field.
Yes.
How did you test your ideas, or are they testable?
Most of them almost didn't call for testing because they're not the nature of the idea, like throwing a towel over the door. You don't have to test because it's almost obvious. There are a few there that we did test. Well, for example, one that I like is for toilet training. Put a little blue food dye in the toilet bowl and show your child how he can turn it green.
Well,
that we did test on my son Jacob,
and it worked great.
It worked. It didn't toilet train him, but it certainly. I mean, not that one thing didn't do it, but it certainly lent something to the whole process and got us all,
caught his attention.
And caught his attention. Sure.
Well, how did you decide on the categories? There are so many within the book, and each chapter, there are so many chapters that apply to parenting, as there are many children, there are many issues. How did you decide on the format, having it in all these many categories rather than concentrating on just a few?
Well, we try to address what we thought our readers were looking for first of all. Excuse me, and also, as our suggestions started coming in the mail, we realized that the categories largely formed themselves almost, and we sort of went with that flow as well. And we did want a lot of categories because we wanted to make things as easy to refer to as possible.
Yes, it's amazing how many tips there are for every chapter.
Oh yes.
How long did it take you to complete the book, to assemble the information together?
Altogether, about 1.5 years.
Interesting. So it took quite a bit of time to just really sort through the ideas.
Yeah, to receive the ideas, to spread the word that we were looking for them, and to receive them, and to sort through them, and of course we had to haggle over a few ideas because some of us have different opinions than others, and so it all had to come out. I think it all came out for the best, though.
Oh, I think so too. Yeah. Why did you select this particular age range, birth to 5 years?
Because it's a good mixture of very practical things that you have to know, especially for the younger side, and then also you get into some of the psychological things as well as the kids get older. It seemed like a manageable age to start off with. Older than that, of course, kids go off to school. They become a lot more independent, and it becomes a lot more psychological as opposed to practical.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, when they're teenagers, it's probably almost exclusively psychological.
A book for every child.
But that's something
Yes.
I can't claim tremendous expertise yet, at least not for another 10 years or so.
Well, it's an age range that, of course, I'm interested in, since I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Were there certain areas of interest to the parents that you worked with? Were concerns really, were they across the board, or were they in certain areas, did you see?
Well, there's certainly a heavy emphasis in certain areas. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Eating is one of them. A lot of ideas about eating. Which actually I can throw up a couple of. I have a couple of props about that. Well, here's one. I guess I'll put out. If your child's a finicky eater, try giving him the food in a novel way, like, for example, in a muffin tin. So he or she can just sort of pick at different categories of food like this, rather than having it in a plate. Or put the food in a plastic toy boat, or a plastic truck, or anything, or a frisbee. In fact, here's a frisbee. Here's another prop. Okay, and just make eating a little more of a game.
Oh, that's a great idea. My son hates to have his food touch.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an excellent idea, something novel.
Another one is if you're in the transition between baby food that you feed him with a spoon and finger food that he's going to feed himself, make baby food sandwiches. So you actually get bread and smear baby food on it and cut it in little quarters and let him eat it.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
I would never have thought of putting that together. Do you and your co-authors plan a sequel to this book?
We're talking about it.
What would that entail?
Well, either progressing beyond the age of 5, or possible. Of course, we also like to do a second edition of this book, and if we get new ideas coming in, expand it. I mean, I think this is a great beginning, but we'd love to even make it much larger and much more inclusive. Sure.
And are you still getting ideas from
Oh yes.
across the country?
Yes, I am.
Well,
I'm
good.
still getting ideas, and I've yes.
Now, collecting all these ideas, how did they affect your parenting of your son Jacob?
Well, they've given us a lot of practical ideas about how to do things, like the toilet training one that I said. That, of course, we've tried out these ideas on him.
How does he feel being the guinea pig?
Well, he doesn't know he's a guinea pig.
He just
First and foremost, to him, it's a game. These things are a game.
How would you like parents to use this book? It's very straightforward, but how do you see them using this book?
I see them, as I said, I think, well, 2 ways, I guess. One is just getting it and flipping through it and just getting ideas where they didn't even know they needed ideas necessarily. Also, if they have a specific problem, be it toilet training or be it feeding or sleeping or whatever, being able to look in the index or in the table of contents and come up with some idea that might just do the trick and gain them a few hours sleep a night, which would be most welcome probably to many parents.
Yes,
I'd also love it if parents would be stimulated by some of these ideas to think of their own. Which I think once parents realize that they're not alone, that there's a lot of people out there thinking up little ways of doing things, that any parent can think up strategies themselves.
Well, I think I remember in the introduction to the book, you had talked about putting your son on top of the dryer.
Yes.
And how it worked. Wish I'd read that a while ago. But yes, that's a very innovative novel.
Yeah, the idea is for a child who has trouble sleeping, put him on a lambskin or any kind of soft surface and put that on the dryer and run the dryer, and the combination of the warmth and the turning inside the dryer will be very soothing.
Nice. Oh my! So that's typical of the tips in the book. Very much practical. Let's see. What was the reaction of the parents that you polled about the idea for the book? Sounds like it
was generally pretty positive. Some parents went on for pages and pages writing ideas down. Others just scribbled some idea on the back of a postcard and sent it in. But generally, it's a very positive. Very positive. I think parents, I think, love to share ideas, and this gave them a forum for it.
Oh, absolutely. Let's see. Parenting ideas can differ. And so you had mentioned it, going through and just looking at the topics. And there are many, many topics, and they involve everything from a newborn all the way up to 5 years old, even party planning, party ideas. Let me just look through the book here because there are so many things that I wanted to, that I enjoyed reading. Special Problem was about temper tantrums and that kind of thing. Now that my child is at age 2, could you share some of your tips on handling temper tantrums?
Well, one is if put on a tantrum yourself. If a play tantrum, if your child's putting on a tantrum, you put on a tantrum, and of course you're going to look totally ridiculous, and the child will realize that and will laugh, and indirectly is laughing at himself, and it's diffusing a great deal of the of whatever's causing the problem. Rather
than really getting into a power struggle, you
yeah, exactly, which you're inevitably going to lose, and probably won't gain much. Now, that's the sort of trick I'd say that I just qualify. Some kids that might work with, other kids might feel mimicked and mocked, which would be backfiring. I wouldn't pursue it if that was the case.
Or even threatened, perhaps.
Yeah, or even threatened by your doing it.
What about being in public? I know we've all experienced it with children in public places, having them.
Oh, having temper tantrums?
Yes.
Yeah, that might be the one area that I don't think we have a tip on, I think.
Well, the idea of distracting them, maybe.
Certainly distracting them is always good, but certainly try that as you probably would at home as well.
See, what other things did you bring today? I see some more, and I don't want to forget.
Sure. This bubble gum. This is I brought because not as if people don't know what bubble gum looks like, but the idea is one mother's had a problem because her daughter wouldn't lie still to be changed. So she was always fidgeting and fussing and moving around. So the mother started chewing bubble gum and blowing big bubbles with her mouth, and the child was totally entranced by this. I would just lie there looking at her mother, and of course the mother had the chance to change the baby.
Gosh, yes. Oh, that's a wonderful idea.
That works out. Squirt gun. In the bathtub, use it to rinse off hair. Use it to just to rinse off in general. Use it to play with a little bit. So this can be very handy. These are ponytail holders that girls use. You put it around a child's wrist when he or she is eating something drippy, like an ice cream or popsicle, and it'll catch the drip.
Oh, that's a great suggestion.
Well, this is not a tremendous prop either, but little audio tapes are very handy. If you're going away and leaving a child with a babysitter, leave an audio tape of you telling a story, or singing a song, or just talking. Or make an audio tape of the grandparent, telling Little Red Riding Hood or talking, anything. It's a way of putting the grandparent in the house, and lending little presents to the grandparent.
Plus, creating a memory.
Yeah, exactly. For teething pain, well, we have two good ideas for teething pain. One is soak a piece of cloth in fruit juice and freeze it, and use it as a teething rag. It's nutritious, it's tasty, and it numbs the pain. Another idea is put some Orajel on a toothbrush and let the child let the child just suck on the toothbrush. That'll also numb some pain.
That's generally what they do anyway. I know my 2-year-old, that she loves to.
Yeah. I could keep going. Melanta. One parent suggests using Melanta as a antidote to diaper rash, because this is an antacid and urine is acid.
So
now, in this one, we have a qualification that you should talk to your pediatrician in case there's some problem other than simple diaper rash. Maybe you should know about it.
And if it doesn't work,
if it doesn't work, then just don't do it. As I say, once again, these ideas don't work with all children. Just little things to try, and they all have worked, at some point.
Well, the publishing of this book, it sounds like you were motivated because you were a parent and wanted to help other parents, and now it's become a success. How do you see this affecting your professional life? You run Eeyore's bookstore in New York. How is
well, I hope this is my first book, but I hope it's not the last. And I would like to keep on going with similar books.
Now, did you edit the book yourself? Each one is so concisely written. Did the three of you get together and decide on?
Yeah, we did have to do some editing. to put it together.
So was one of you an editor, or did you, all three of you?
Well, all three of us edited, then I wrote.
Oh.
is what it came down to.
You were the designated
And of course, it was
writer.
all pre-written because it was all on paper, but it had to be put in in a good, succinct format. And each suggestion had to be a little bit punchy.
Now, was it difficult to sell this idea to a publisher?
Actually, no. We wrote up a proposal. Carol Boswell's husband is actually a book packager, which is to say somebody who tries to put together book projects. So he had some real experience in the field. So he wrote up a proposal and submitted it to different publishers, and a couple of them thought it was an absolutely terrific idea.
Good, to our benefit.
And we're very pleased with HarperCollins. We think they've done a great job with it.
That's great. That's great. When did you first start collecting ideas?
Probably when, so I think of this, of course, in terms of how old Jacob was. We probably thought of the idea when he was about 3 months, and then started collecting ideas when he was about 6 months later, maybe 5, 6 months later. Informally, of course. Before that, I was always noting little ideas down, but the real push came later.
Well, and do you work with your wife? What is her participation? You say that she's a psychologist.
Psychiatrist.
Psychiatrist.
Yeah, she has her own private practice in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, which is near where we live.
So, and you, she will be joining you in the sequels with Carol?
Possibly. You know, the sequels are still very much in the talking phase, so nothing has been set in stone.
How, if someone had a hint that they wanted to send to you, how would they go about doing that?
The best would be to send it to the publisher, HarperCollins, at 10 East 53rd Street.
That's not how I was going
53rd
to
or
say
52nd Street. 53rd Street, excuse me. 10 East 53rd Street, New York, 10022. And I guess make it attention Joel Fram, and they'll forward it to me.
Great.
F-R-A-M.
Yes, I'm sure.
And certainly we welcome any ideas.
Well, I'm sure
that people
our
have.
listeners may have some that they would like to share with you. I do recommend getting the book, though. That'll give you a head start for anyone who's interested in that.
Thank you.
Let's see. As a parent of a 2-year-old, I have a question that I need to ask.
Okay.
My daughter consistently says no, only she says it oh. And is very independent. How can you encourage her not to say no so much? Is there a hint in your book about that?
That's a very good question. Jacob went through the same thing of no, no, no. And just, I understand by that, no is I think is an easier word to say than yes for a young child.
It must be.
But we can't reform the English language to make life easier for parents. Nothing. I guess that's one other thing that I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of a suggestion on that specific thing. I think once again a little distraction would probably help.
Yes, that O comes out so often, but yes, distraction might help them. They're very headstrong. So
yeah, definitely 2-year-olds can be extremely headstrong.
yes, and I like the approach in your book too. Is that were very respectful of children.
Oh,
that
yes,
each one needed to be cared about and listened to, so that the ideas really address that rather than making them behave in a certain way. Each idea or each tip was addressed for a very specific thing, use it or not.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a great believer in giving kids choices, giving kids some sort of either power over what's going on, or even the illusion of power, just so they have a sense of responsibility for what's going on, and they don't just have things being dumped on them. I think that's part of the idea of the monster spray, and there are a lot of other suggestions in the book that incorporate that sort of thing.
Very much so, very much so. And I really think that these are very good tips for making parenting easier and more effective, but they also teach self-esteem. They encourage and promote self-esteem within a child. I think that's really important. Now that Jacob's old enough, does he realize what you've put together? Does he help you?
I tried showing it to him and say, you see that book? You see those names on the book? That's Mommy and that's Daddy. And unfortunately, he was not very interested.
Oh, that doesn't thrill him.
He wanted to go back to his Bambi videotape or something, and that was the end of it.
Oh, Well, soon maybe he will.
Soon I hope he's adequately impressed.
Or maybe helping to contribute.
Or yeah, he probably has some good ideas about what we're doing wrong. So, which I'm sure at some point I'm going to hear about. Maybe it's better sooner than later.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying I could throw out some more ideas if you're interested.
I'd love it. I love the idea.
Because there's more ideas on food, certainly. My wife's a real food person, and she loved this one. To cool down hot food, ahead of time, freeze low-sodium chicken broth in an ice cube tray. So if you have to cool down food, use a chicken broth ice cube instead of an ordinary ice cube. So it cools the food down without diluting the flavor.
Oh, that's great.
That was one we liked. This is another psychological one. If well, a couple of actually ones. If you want the child to eat more vegetables, which of course I think parents are always trying to get children to do, one thing to do is before dinner, while they're sitting around watching TV or playing around or something like that, and say dinner's not ready yet, but here's a snack, and then put out some carrots and broccoli or whatever else you're trying to get them to eat. And if they don't see it as vegetables being foisted on them in the course of dinner, they might very well just pick it up and chew on it and eat it.
Especially if they're crunchy, not crunchy.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Another idea is serve vegetables at dinner time, only don't even offer it to them. You and your husband or whatever, just simply serve yourselves the vegetables and say, hey, these are really great. Oh boy, that's a great broccoli, et cetera, et cetera. And at some point the kid's going to chirp in and say, hey, what are you eating there? What's so good? And you can say, well, it's not really for you, but I'll tell you what, we'll give you some anyway.
Talk about psychological.
This is a little psychological, it's true.
But they're all the same. So about wanting to share.
Yeah, exactly.
What about some anxiety, leaving children? What are some ideas about that?
One thing that I liked is, as you're leaving the child at daycare or whatever, give them something of yours. Just a key or a pencil, or maybe not pencil, but just some object that he clearly identifies with you, and just say, please hold this for me, and when I pick you up at the end of the day, you can give it back to me.
Oh, that's a great idea.
So it reminds them of you. It gives them a little bit of responsibility,
and tells them that you definitely will be back.
Yes, absolutely, because you want him back, and you want the toy back.
Yeah. Well, I have to say I've enjoyed talking with you. I think this is an excellent book.
Thank you.
It sounds like it's something that many parents will enjoy reading, and I've enjoyed talking with you about it. For a discussion with Joel Fram, I'm Carol Reed. I hope you can join us again.
A presentation of the Hennepin County Library.